Welcome to a new lesson episode of Just Math PH. Variables, substitution, term, factors, algebraic expression, polynomial. These are some of the common reactions of my students. But ano nga bang mga ito? So I decided to make a video and define all these terms as simple as possible. So let's start with variable. So a variable is a letter used to represent an unknown number. Again, it is a letter. This letter could be any letter in the English alphabet, such as A, B, C, up to X, Y, Z. You don't need to use all the time the variable or the letter X. You could also use A, B, or any letter of the English alphabet. So for example, x plus 3. Here, x is a variable. So x here, we do not know what its value. So we have to write it in a variable. Another example, b squared minus 4ac. Here we have three variables such as b, a, and c. So this represents an unknown number. Now let's have the second term, which is substitution. Substitution means replacing a variable by its given value or number. So it means replacing. For example, let x be equal to the set 1, 2, and 3. Now we will replace x with these numbers 1, 2, and 3 one at a time to the given expression x plus 5. So for the first column, let's write here x equals 1. And in the second column, that is x equals 2. On the third, x equals 3. Then we will replace them to replace these values to x plus 5. So x, replace it with 1, and that becomes 1 plus 5. Replace x with 2, that becomes 2 plus 5. Or substitute x with 3, that becomes 3 plus 5. So simplifying this, we have 1 plus 5 is 6, 2 plus 5 is 7 when x is equal to 2, and 3 plus 5 is equal to 8 when x is equal to 3. So that is substitution. Now let's define term. We know that plus or minus separates an expression into several parts. And each part, together with its sign, which means the positive or the negative, is called a term of the expression. Again, each part is a term. And these terms could either be a single number, a letter, or a product of several numbers or letters. For example, x plus 5. This expression is separated by plus. And if we will count the terms, we have 1 and 2. We have two terms. And these terms are the following. X or positive x is a term, and positive 5 is also a term. For the next example, 2x squared plus 5x minus 7. This expression is separated by plus and minus. And counting them, we have 1, 2, 3 terms. These terms are positive 2x squared is a term, and positive 5x is a term, and negative 7 is a term. Do not forget to include their signs when mentioning or writing the term. How many terms are there in each expression? So the first column is an example of one term only expression. So notice in the third example, 12a squared, b cubed, c cubed, d to the power of 4, though it has many variables, it is still considered as one term. How about the second column? The second column is an example of two terms. So the third example, negative 1/2 x squared plus 12. The first term here is negative 1/2 x squared. And the second term is the positive 12. How about the third column? The third column is an example of three terms. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3. Now let's define algebraic expression. An algebraic expression is a statement containing one or more terms connected by plus or minus signs. For example, x plus 7, the whole of it, is called an algebraic expression. And 2x plus 3y minus 4z, the whole expression, is still called an algebraic expression, but for simply naming it, we could just call it expression. They are not different. They are just the same. Now let's proceed to a special algebraic expression called polynomials. So polynomials are still algebraic expression. It's just that they are just so special because these expressions are very strict for them to be called polynomial. It must satisfy the following conditions for it to be called a polynomial. First is it must have no variable in the denominator. Second, it must have no variable inside the radical sign. And last, exponents of the variable should be whole numbers. Again, no variable is in the denominator, no variable is inside the radical sign, and exponents of the variable are whole numbers. These three conditions must be true for it to be called a polynomial. So which of the following are polynomials and which are not? So for easy identification of these expressions as polynomials or not, so we will cover them with something if it's not a polynomial. So let's identify the first expression. 4 over y is obviously not a polynomial because it has a variable in the denominator, which is y. So we will cover that. Square root of 5w plus 1, that is a polynomial. Although there is a radical sign, but w or the variable w is not inside it. So that is a polynomial. X is obviously a polynomial. Negative 43 is also a polynomial. A constant is a polynomial. Now for this next example, 12st plus 2u to the negative 1, this is obviously not a polynomial because it has negative 1 as an exponent, and negative 1 is not a whole number exponent. So let's cover that. Square root of 5w is not a polynomial because w is inside the radical sign. So let's cover that one. This one is an example of a polynomial. How about this? Is not a polynomial because it has negative 3 as an exponent, and that is not a whole number. So let's cover it. 12 over x squared plus y is obviously not a polynomial because it has x in the denominator. So we will cover that. And this one is a polynomial because it has no variable in the denominator. Lastly, this one is not a polynomial because it has -1 as its exponent and it's not a whole number. So we will cover them. So these are the polynomials. Now let's have the three types of polynomial, which is the first one, monomial. It means a polynomial with one term only. Next is the binomial, a polynomial with two terms, from the word bi, which means two. And last is the trinomial. It's a polynomial with three terms, tri, which means three. Let's have an example. Give the name for each polynomial. 4x squared y cubed, that's a monomial. X squared minus 10, that is a binomial. -30, that is a monomial. 2a cubed plus bc over 4, that's a binomial. And x squared plus 2y minus x plus y, how many terms do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a multinomial, or we could just simply call it polynomial because it has many terms. And the last one, 3x squared minus 5x plus 8, that's a trinomial. So for our next term, algebra term, is the numerical coefficient. The numerical coefficient, this is the number part in a term. For example, 4x is a term, and the number part of it is 4, and 4 is the numerical coefficient. Next is the literal coefficient. This is now the variable part in the term. So let's use the same example. So if 4 is the numerical term, x is the literal coefficient here. It's the variable part, so it's called the literal coefficient. Next is the constant. Now a constant is, I simply define it as the number on its own. For example, 4x plus 5. So can you spot the number alone here? It has no variables accompanied with it. It's just a number on its own. That is right. 5 is the constant here. Let's have some examples. 5x squared. 5 is the numerical coefficient, and x squared is the literal coefficient. How about -45abc? -45 is the numerical coefficient, and abc is the literal coefficient. Let's have this question. Which is the numerical coefficient in the term 11n? So what is the answer? Okay, the answer is 11. Correct. Next question. Which is the literal coefficient in the term 215pq? So the literal coefficient is the variable part. So the answer is D. PQ is the correct answer, or letter D. Now let's define algebraic equation. By definition, it is a statement containing one or more terms connected by plus or minus signs with the symbol of equality or equals. So that is algebraic equation, or simply equation. Example, x plus 7 is equal to 10. That is an algebraic equation. Now, notice that the equal sign divides the left side and the right side of the equation. So x plus 7 is on the left side and positive 10 is on the right side. 2x plus 3y minus 4z equals 20. is still an algebraic equation, or we could just simply call it equation. They are just the same. Now let's have some examples for algebraic term, algebraic expression, and algebraic equation. So for the algebraic expression 2x plus 29, the terms are 2x and positive 29. And for the equation, we had 2x plus 29 equals 50. Next example, x minus y is our expression, and the terms are x and negative y. Again, include the sign. So that is negative y. And for the equation, x minus y equals negative 10. Next is the expression a squared plus 2b minus 5. The terms are a squared, 2b, and negative 5. In the equation, we have a squared plus 2b minus 5 equals 9. And next is let's define factor. Now factor or factors. Now factor is a number or a variable or a term that we multiply together to get the product. Example, the product is negative 6 and the factors are negative 3 and positive 2. So these are the numbers we'll multiply to get the product. So negative 3 is a factor, positive 2 is a factor, and negative 6 is the product. Next is negative 3x times 2x equals negative 6x squared. So negative 6x squared is the product, and the factors for this product are negative 3x and positive 2x.